Lynn?
I'm
Sorry,
ready. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to sound. I was just asking. You need a minute? Call the meeting to order. David.
Okay, very good. Tim's going to get us kicked off and give a brief overview of kind of where we're at and what all we're doing, and then we'll climb into the details, and I have a few discussion items that we'd like to go over. So, Tim.
Okay, thank you, David. Commissioner, this is the fourth workshop in the budget process for the 12-13 fiscal year. As you recall, we started off the workshops on March 8th, was your first one. Kind of get some oversight and some direction early on as to how you wanted to prepare the budget for this year. And as you can see, we put some things in place, including, introduced the 5-year plan implementation, and we got some general budget directions moving forward. Some of the directives that came out of that workshop was to no health care insurance costs for employees. They won't be sharing in the health insurance increases. Zero position growth, and the rollback rate as the basis for the 2012-13 budget. Your second workshop was on June 28th. Basically, at that workshop, we kind of gave you an insight into the draft tentative budget. What came out of that workshop was that there would be no increase or decrease to line item funding for outside agencies, and we also determined that the millage rate wasn't going to be the rollback rate. It was going to be 8.5 for the tentative budget, same as last year. And then on July 17th, we had a third budget workshop, which mostly focused on public works. It was really an overview by the county administrator and the public works department into the 5-year plan and all the aspects of that program. So that's kind of where we've been so far this year. This workshop is basically your workshop, commissioners. The budget is now yours. This is to give you an opportunity to express like, dislike, changes, whatever you want to do to the budget. We've made a few minor changes I think David's going to go over for you regarding the 5-year plan and a fine and forfeiture fund we want to set up. But that's kind of in a nutshell where we are. I've included some of the highlights of the tentative budget as far as revenues, where we've seen increases, where we've seen decreases, as well as we've had a 5% increase in health insurance. That's included in the budget. And I've laid out all the expenditures for each department, as well as, highlight some of the increases that we've had there. So that's kind of where we are. And like I said, this is your budget workshop, and we'll take direction from there.
Do y'all have a copy of the detailed breakdown with you?
The budget. I've got
the budget book.
Got the budget book. Yeah. One of the corrections out of the 5-year plan was in our solid waste program, solid waste fund. We had failed to. We had listed as projects capital expenditures of $1,509,000. $1 million as we were going to $1,509,000, and we had only put $1 million in on the revenue side. The $500,000 is sitting now in a reserve for capital expenditures and maintenance that we're required to have set aside by DEP. We had not moved that into the revenue line as part of our capping, so therefore once we moved that into the revenue line, that made a $509,000 correction. Therefore, that brings our total ending fund balance next year will be a positive $426,306, and in year 2017 that'll be a positive $643,323. Therefore, by 2017, that fund will be completely healed. That'll be a job well done, and it'll be set for the future. No increases in the future or anything anticipated as far as waste product.
I have a question, if I could, about solid waste real quick. What of our $196 a year assessment, I was asked this by somebody, I really didn't have an answer for it. How much of that is to fund the closure of the landfill? None of it?
Closure is funded through
The DEP set aside $509,000, and we're going to take out a loan for the other portion.
Okay, so none of the 196. The question I was asked was, well, once the landfill's closed, that should come off our assessment. But you're telling me it's not part of that assessment?
There's going to be, it's paid from the franchise fee.
Right.
Probably the commercial franchise.
The commercial franchise fee is where that'll be paid out of.
And it's going to be loaned for how many?
It's a loan for a 5-year loan?
I think it's a 10-year loan.
10-year loan.
But
So
what,
I'm sorry, theoretically, after the 10 years is over,
You'll still have your monitoring, and the monitoring will be paid for out of our portion of the 196.
how much is that? How much of the 196 is for ongoing monitoring?
Please?
that doesn't really matter to me. My question was, if it's a capital cost that's going to be paid for and is no longer there, theoretically, we should reduce the assessment.
In 10 years, we can do that.
Okay,
When-
that's the answer. That's
it's-
all I need to hear.
That 10 years, again, I think it's important to stress, it's coming from the franchise fee collected off of commercial solid waste collection.
Right.
Which is not in the 196.
Which isn't in the 196.
I understand.
And it would still be coming back towards solid waste, but yeah, we could possibly.
They just said, and rightfully so, that politicians will find a way to spend it, even if we paid off the thing, but at least that's 10 years down the road for somebody else.
But I still think it's important for the public to understand that 190 and 96 is not just the Waste Pro contract, that some of that is for the ongoing monitoring of the 3 landfills.
It's a solid waste.
Right. How much of the 196 goes toward monitoring, Cleve, about?
I don't know, but, again, I'm walking into this thing later, it'd be, for the monitoring of the 3 landfills and the additional, the construction of the permanent cap, but we don't have already funded.
But the easy part to do is how much of the 196 goes directly to Waste Pro.
183.
183.
So that's the easier part. So the other part's going towards different types of administration of the project.
And like Commissioner Merritt said, eventually that number will eventually come down.
Well, and also, we say 10 years, Randy. In theory, as this fund is healed and we're at a $643,000 fund balance, in theory, we could start, according to what happens with our, CPIs, and we don't know what's happening with the economy, but technically we could, start.
I'm not saying I want to get ourselves where we're riding the razor's edge to save somebody
Right.
$2 or $3 a month,
Right.
a year, but, you know what I'm saying? I
But
was
in
I was
5
asked
years,
that
we'll
question,
be-
and I didn't have the answer, now I do.
In 5 years, we'll be healed. So, and then that'll be at a point where it'll be a decision point as to what we want to do with probably pay the loan down, pay it back quicker, and then that'll make it a 7 or 8 year proposition, and what do we do with where we stand then. Okay. Also, what we did is we corrected excuse me, I pulled the wrong one. 1 cent sales tax. If y'all remember, there were some questions as to in the out years as to what we were going to be doing with some of the funds that we had, or some of the facilities that are currently needed. What we did is basically in public facilities. We set forth for a soccer complex or some facility such as that we'll have the funds to start interjecting to purchase some land for that project of $125,000 in 2015, and then a subsequent $500,000 split between 2016 and 17. That is, those are in out years, so that's set aside money that we can put towards a soccer complex or expanding our existing ball fields or working on our existing ball fields. But we went ahead and earmarked it for that.
Looking at the document before us,
Yes.
it looks like in the half cent on page 3, where it's broken down just FY 2011, 2012, 2012, 2013, the half cent sales tax drops in value $27,000 on the first one. The half cent sales tax supplement looks like it goes up $31,000, but it's reported as a negative. I was just checking. Unless I'm reading this somehow wrong.
That's a different revenue. That's not your 1 cent sales tax, Commissioner. That's your state revenue coming in on the
Okay, but
overall
it's going from $634,000 to $665,000, and it says negative.
Right, it should be a positive variance.
Yeah, right? I mean, unless the numbers are written.
You're correct. I'm sorry. Yes.
That's a positive variance.
Typo.
Yes.
Unless
It
it's
should be a
written.
positive. You're right.
Is it positive? I was just trying to figure out if the numbers are
It
put in the
It's
wrong
positive.
boxes.
It's positive. Sorry about that.
Does the total change then, at the bottom? Or is it just a typo, or does it affect the math?
It would go up 31, no?
Yes. Yep.
Did you catch that?
Other than that, that was the substance changes on the 1 cent sales tax that was made. We'd also, on roads, part of the 1 cent sales tax, we went ahead and earmarked $170,000 a year for road resurfacing and subdivisions. That starts in 2014. That would allow us to do some minor resurfacing of 4 or 5 miles at the pop. And that we took that money out of our alternative road paving projects, therefore bringing that number down a bit. Still, at the end of the day, at 2017, we'll have $800,000 stick towards a road paving project.
Let me ask you back on the rec money and where you're getting it. I know that on the 1% sales tax we get 5%.
For rec.
For the rec. Are we talking about rec in here right now? Have we got rec?
We just talked about recreation.
Okay.
Yeah, you can turn and talk about it.
Okay, I do want to talk about it. Are you working off the 5%? Is that what you're working off?
We're working within what is mandated, yes.
Okay, and mandated means what?
Well, we're also, now, one of the things we're doing is like we put the soccer complex inside of public facilities, because technically it's a public facility, so therefore we're using some of that money as a soccer complex.
But we're still at the 5%.
You're at 5% for the recreation cap.
How do I change the 5% and move it up?
Vote of the board. They'll have to do that.
Yeah. When do we change that? Please excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
When do we change that? Whenever we like.
That's once we fully analyze this and we can bring back a recommendation.
Isn't there a committee, 1 cent sales tax?
There's a 1 cent sales tax committee, yes.
I don't want to get in a position here on the 5% for the rec that I can't change. I want to move that 5% up, so I don't want to say, yes, I agree with this budget and wind up stuck with my 5%. Because I want the rec budget to have more money.
Well, then the question becomes of that percentage breakdown, what percentage, because the road can't really change because it's leased out. It's mortgaged out, and so you can take from the sheriff's department and EMS?
I'll take that 5% equally from everybody. I just want the children, I think it might be easier, because we're getting ready to renew that tax, as you're setting up, because it'll happen in the next 2 years, to set up the next 1 penny, since you have a larger percentage. I can do that, but I don't want to get in a deal where that when we do that, I want to make sure that our rec department, I want to make sure our children.
I think it would be easier if you want to give the rec park more money.
I want to give the rec park,
which I think is your goal.
Yeah.
I think it'd be easier to cut something other than the 1 cent sales tax, to look at our ad valorem and cut something there.
I don't want to raise taxes.
You're not raising taxes. You can say, I want to zero fund the library and take that $200,000 and give it to the rec park.
I don't want to do that either.
But it's when you can.
Hey, library, I said I did that.
Well, you could say,
Hang on.
Commissioner Arts.
Okay, first, and I'll follow up on what you're saying in just a minute before you get yourself in more trouble.
I say the library because everyone knows I love the library. We'll never let it get cut.
Okay, but I'm on page 6, where it says parks allocate $162,270,000 over 5 years for improvements at Medark Park. Okay, that is park and rec impact fees, correct?
No,
Or what's the
1 cent sales tax.
Okay, so that money is 1 cent sales tax?
Yes.
Okay. And then the public facilities, the $625,000, that's from the old impact fee category?
Everything you see here changes from the 1 cent sales
All
tax.
of this is from the 1% sales tax? Okay. Well, and then the other options for, okay, so I agree with this 1% sales tax money is going to end very soon. And I agree that when the next one is set, when that goes to the ballot and is hopefully approved, that would be a good time to discuss the percentages going to each other.
I can agree with that. I don't
Okay, but hang on, let me just finish. If you really want to help kids to increase the rec park money, then what I think we as a board should do is reinstitute the residential impact fees it's Park and Rec and, what's the other one? What's the other one? Library. Those are the only two. So it would be very minimal to anybody who's building a house in the county, and it's spread out over the life of their mortgage in most cases, and it funds two of the most important facilities that we have for our youth, our library and Park and Rec. And so I'm just putting it out there.
I could probably support something like that if we could. That's the only thing the only way I'd support an impact. If it is going in the right direction, that I feel that will benefit the most kids, then I can do that. But there's certain parts of. We don't want to throw it out there and then have it just spread out all over the place and everybody gets everything.
Well, I think that this board several of us have previously expressed a desire to at least reimpose the residential.
I've got that. I presented that number some months ago. When I told y'all I'd go back and refigure, it's $49. That's what I come up with. Because once you assuming the 1 cent sales tax stays here, because say the impact's $600. Over the lifetime, over 20 years, when you amortize that 1 cent sales tax contribution, that's counted as a credit. The difference between the two is $49. And on the cost side, the impact fee study assumed raw land, or whatever parts, cost $100,000 an acre. That may have been true in 2005, but I got a bunch of land that I know people would sell for $100,000 an acre all day long. So I went back and assumed $50,000 an acre for purchasing park property. So the only one I don't have is law enforcement, because I can't get my hands around that one too good. But I have the library, I have the...
Let's move forward on at least that.
That's fine with me. I mean, I've always supported the impact.
I can't move forward myself until I know what's included in that and how are we going to spend that? Are we going to use it in maintenance? Are we going to buy land for new fields?
Impact fees have very specific ways that they can be spent. They can only be spent to build new things or acquire new technology. They can't be used for maintenance or staff.
Growth.
But that's what we've been talking about in Northern Rec Park, this soccer complex. That's exactly why you have Park and Rec impact fees.
It would go towards building parks. It would go towards expanding
I'd be
parks.
happy to bring it back up.
Go towards building a library.
Remember I
building
asked...
a second library.
We're going to bring this up.
Well, I wanted to first sit down with Greg and Tim and at least go over my math and make sure everything's, sound. I'm not sticking my...
When you're talking about $50,000 an acre for land?
They had assumed $100,000. Well, when you
Are
look
you
at...
talking about two lots? Are you talking about lots or just an acre of
We're
land?
probably getting off the subject a little bit, but you have to kind of use an average. Shell Point Beach probably is worth a lot more than $100,000 an acre for beachfront property. Meadow Rec Park is probably worth a lot less than...
Way less.
See what I'm saying? So you had to just kind of make an assumption based on, the boat ramp Matches Sands is worth
And the fee he's talking about would be an extra $50 per house at the moment, the way he's talking about it, as it's built.
Now, this soccer complex, is that supposed to be part of a Northern Rec Park, or?
That could be, yes, ma'am.
Or it could go, the Trice Lane location, I think we talked about.
It could be anywhere in the northern area. Our thoughts were somewhere in either expand Meadow Park by purchase some land at Meadow Park and/or expand it in this northern region somewhere where
Well, there's a need for both places.
That's right. There's a need for both places.
There's a need in 267 and 319.
Other side of the county, over by the prison.
Well, not that far over.
Well, that's perfect. There's land there that we have that would be donated that we could put buildings on, and that's where you have 1/5 of our population, not counting the prisoners, over in my district.
You're trying to vote the prisoners.
Huh?
You're trying to vote the prisoners.
No, I'm not counting the prisoners.
I'm just kidding you.
Okay.
So anyway, the 1 cent sales tax is, we're pretty much on the 5-year plan. We have that set. We've just going through that this coming up year of Y'all care to go through that, or you want to move on to something else since it's your item?
Go over what?
You gonna move on to something else?
Wait, Commissioner Moore, before
Any
we,
more
before we
questions?
leave the penny, where are you, okay. I want you, because I felt like you weren't finished with your thought. Did you have any more?
If it's specific to, let's just say if the impact fee is specific to building
Right.
rec fields, then I'm...
And that'll come back, I think Commissioner Merritt will bring that back. I was going back to the penny before we left the penny. You were talking about changing percentages.
I can change that, well, we can change that, or whoever, on the next turn.
I think
As-
it is-
The next penny we pass in 2 years?
Yeah, as we are here, I won't get into that,
Okay.
but...
That's all I was double
Let
checking.
me make one more point. What percentage is public facilities, Dave? Do you know off the top of your head?
What percent is of this?
Of the 1 cent sales
Tim
tax?
should know.
Say it's,
It's 20%.
20%.
20%. All right, Jerry, notice that in the public facilities, $625,000 is going to a soccer complex, which you obviously would call Parks and Rec, right? So even though only 5% is allocated to it, it's actually getting a lot more than that because they're using the public facilities money to build a soccer complex.
That's a good point.
Okay, but the other side of that coin is you can pull that public facilities off and you...
And improve the courthouse.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I don't want to do that. I don't want...
We're already paying for the Taj
If it's-
Mahal already.
I don't want to get caught in I don't want to get caught in something where that if I'm asking for it to go to softball fields or soccer fields, I don't want it to be caught in some other budget that it can be switched off some other direction.
can't even
I'm
go-
glad to take their money. I'm glad to take their money. I just don't want them taking my money.
And we can't take that money to be, we can't take, no, never mind. Sorry. I was going to talk about impact fees. You can't use impact fees to fix existing fields. You can only use them to build new fields. Right, I'm just making sure you understand.
Now, can you tell me that just so I'm aware of, this $625,000 that would go toward the soccer complex, what is that instead of?
That was monies that we had put up in a reserve, that we had reserved throughout in the public facilities. We had set that aside as a reserve.
Right, but what are your
Well,
second or
we
two?
earmarked it as a soccer complex.
Okay, but that money could, like Jerry said, could be used for any number of
Yes,
public
any number,
facilities.
that's
So what are we putting, what is second or third on the list that we aren't directing this money to?
Right now, we have everything, this would fund everything that we currently need as far as new facilities. And these, we didn't pull away from anything, we just pulled it out of reserve. And there will be some future needs, but also we'll have hopefully future monies that we can pull that from. So, but you're right, we're setting that aside, and that may, you're right, that may come back out of there at some point in time as another need arises. That's a possibility.
So it won't really be much of anything.
David, can you go back to page 4 and just, for my sake and the public's, help us understand, because I think the public needs to hear this. I think, well, I know most of them, the only one I'm not real sure of is facilities management, but look at the variance column, the increase or decrease, if you will, which in the end equates to a 4.73% overall increase in expenditures.
Right.
But can you just, for the sake of myself and the public, tell them what, just concentrate on the ones that increased?
The increase, first off, there was an increase in the medical cost to run our jail inmates for jail inmate care. We had to change up based upon federal standards. We had to change that up, and the sheriff has successfully negotiated a new contract that took it from about they were operating at about a $700,000 level, and that took it to $1 million contract. So that was a big chunk of that. EMS, what we found was we went ahead and increased the way it was budgeted last year. EMS the attempt is to not fund one of the supervisor's position, one of the shift supervisor's position, and then fund a flex position in every shift. The problem is that looked good on paper, but in reality, when it came to execution, that we were paying a lot of double time and time and a half time from other shift supervisors taking that shift, as well as other folks within there. You couldn't get the flex guys all the time at every shift, so therefore we're budgeting correctly this year where we're fully staffing the 3 shifts that we've got, so we can eliminate unforeseen overtime. That's the entire purpose of that.
Does that eliminate the overtime?
It doesn't. No, sir. You're still going to have overtime. That's just the way it's built in for shift work. You'll still have overtime, but it will be under a much more controlled circumstance. The increase will be for my position, parks. We've added in a parks position, and also the planning, or mainly the planning and zoning position. My position in planning and zoning were never fully funded.
So the 13.51 in county administration is you,
Right.
correct?
Right.
The planning and zoning, 20.45 is Louis.
Right.
So then, when you say you, the county administrator, when you mean you, what do you mean by you?
Well, my position. My position was not fully
Is that
funded.
fully funded for a year?
That's right.
Okay.
Fully
I want to make
funded
sure
for a
everybody
year.
understands that.
That's right. Fully funded for a year.
And there's also the purchase of the vehicle in there. That's just a one-time capital outlay that we've got budgeted in there as well, so.
Right.
Okay.
We've also got increase in health care costs, 5% that we're covering. That was through our capital health care plan, and then the overall Florida retirement system increases that are anticipated for this year.
Planning and zoning,
That's Louis.
that's Louis' position, fully
That's right. That's
funded?
Louis' position. That's right. Fully funded, because remember last year we only partially funded it.
What about facilities management?
Facilities management, that 53% reflects the fact that we have very old and aging facilities, and we've got to maintain them.
So this is this is repairs.
This is repair and maintenance. We're right now, I have roughly about 7 roofs that are currently leaking at a level that's causing us to have mold issues all over the county. We've got air conditioners going out on a regular basis. This number will climb in the future if we don't start taking care of some of our stuff from capital expenditures.
On the Energy Committee, they really felt that facilities management needed to be increased, so we did more preventive repair, maintenance, and we'd save money over the long
It's
run.
not people, that's repairs.
That's repairs,
Upgrade.
Preventive maintenance.
preventative maintenance, yeah. I mean, we're
And
not,
I think that's the most important thing of the 5-year plan, is just figuring out a repair and maintenance plan so that our
that's coming
buildings
next,
are...
that's right.
And what about the library, 12.52?
That's offsetting, I think, the cut
Yes.
from Friends of the Library is a 75% cut.
5%.
Yeah, Friends of the Library in the state.
Which the Friends of the Library are local citizens who donate money.
And the donations are off that bad? Or they're just not going to give it to them?
I think that they're just got, address these concerns.
Curiosity is not concerned.
With the local budget reductions the past few years, the Friends of the Library have had to pay for more things to the library than they were intended to pay for, and frankly, the bank account's gotten low. So I've had to reduce what we're asking for them this year because of that, because they can't afford to keep donating at the same amount they have in the past few years.
So the Friends of the Library play entirely for the children's program in the summer?
This upcoming year, yeah, and a little bit for books to help us pay for the summer reading books for the schools.
And then they paid for all the books. The county hasn't bought any books for the
The
library.
state aid and the Friends have been paying for the books for the 5 years I've been down here. The county hasn't paid for the books.
Our money
That
just goes to
predates
staff.
me. I'm sorry?
Our money just covers staff.
Staff, and for the upcoming budget year, I moved back in because of the state aid possible reduction. The utilities, they keep the door open costs, the utilities, the internet, those bills. But yeah, that's all that the county pays for.
And it's important, and then talk about again how state aid works, so that as long as we're reaching, I think if we can reach 1% of our budget, what we get from the state goes up significantly.
For us to get what it's commonly called the double whammy, for us to get that big, I did ask the state library, it would almost have to double what we get from the county. It hasn't changed from last year when I asked them. I can get a exact number from her if you'd like, but...
Okay, we can talk, and there might be ways to discuss how we do that, because it needs to be 1% of the budget, right?
Yeah.
So I give it...
And some other, the formula they use, literally it takes up an entire
Okay.
wall space. It's a very complicated formula.
It's probably not going to happen.
But for the,
There's lots of ways to do it. I'm just,
but it is, layman's terms, the state aid is based on how much we get from the county each year. So it's not an even match. The more we get from the county, the more we'll get from state aid 2 years down the road.
You've probably already answered the question. The 194 went up to 219. Why was that?
Because I've moved utilities, internet, telephone, to keep the door open expenses out of state aid and the local, because I don't yet know what state aid is going to be for next year.
Okay. So there was actually not a crazy, you just sort of moved it around?
Yes.
I don't know, I thought it was 1% of the 20 million.
I was just asking, Al, is it 1% of the general fund budget, or is it 1% of the BOCC budget? That makes it.
Of the general fund budget, I believe.
General fund.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to go back to the public facilities money, and that was reserve funding. Okay, so that $625,000, in addition to using it for like a third courtroom or whatever, which I don't think we don't need to do. I think we can use these chambers as a third courtroom. But in addition to that, could that be used for the fire and EMS station that we need?
We actually have in the budget next year, $449,000 will be the EMS portion of a facility, and then the other $1 million comes out of the MSBU.
Right.
The finance side of the MSBU.
Right, but if we wanted to, we could use if we wanted to provide more at that facility or whatever, or use one of those for a substation at Wakulla Gardens or whatever, we could use this. There's no restriction.
Yes, for EMS, yes.
The public facilities I'm talking about.
EMS,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, and we could.
Not fire, but EMS.
Okay.
We could use it for fire.
You could, yeah. But you don't,
Right.
There's
We could use it for any
You
public
could.
building.
Right, that's what I thought. That was what I was getting at. We could also use it to build an aquatic center, a pool or
That's right.
whatever. Okay, and who is making these decisions?
What's that, on the extended plans? I am.
You are. On how the reserve funds is going to be allocated over
Reserve
5
funds and out
years?
years, we will, every year, we will tweak these plans, and y'all will have the ultimate call on all those.
But
I have to present you guys with this year's budget based upon the information I've gotten, and but the out years, I have to make a guess at what you guys want based on the operations of the county, and then y'all can tweak it however you want to.
Okay.
Where are we now in the process of the conversation, David?
Well, I tell you, we probably, unless you guys have any more comments on public facilities, we went through Commissioner Stewart. Have we answered your questions here? Which is very good. I'm glad you brought that up. I reckon the next item that what we'll be doing is I will be bringing back the end of this week. We'll be finalizing another portion of our budget based upon the reorganization that we're getting ready to go through. As y'all are aware, Tim will be he'll at the end of the year will no longer be with the county. Therefore, I'll be bringing back a budget based upon reflecting that that change, as well as some other personnel changes that we'll be making, as well as a new organizational chart. We'll finalize that by Friday, and also what will be reflected in that is moving the finances over to the clerk of court's office, and we'll be meeting with Greg and with Brent on that as well, so we'll both be adjusting our budgets accordingly. Any ideas or any comments on that? Okay. The other thing that we have not budgeted for that I'm concerned with is our participation with the Restore Act. As you know, that's anywhere from a $10 to a $40 million plus for Wakulla County. And we're going to have to, as this thing unfolds next year, we're going to more than likely need to spend some dollars in engineering, consulting, et cetera, mainly in consulting, to make sure that we get our share of those funds, our citizens get our share of those funds. Currently, we haven't budgeted much for consulting, but what I would propose is that what funds that we have left over from our personnel reorg, that those funds be set in reserve, and then as the picture becomes clearer next year on the Restore Act, then we can set a number for consulting and pull those out of reserves at that time, but for right now, reserve those funds. Does that make sense to you guys? I just wanted you to be aware of that because, like I say, it's still too early in the Restore Act right now. The picture's not 100% clear, as Alan can tell you, as to when, where, and how, and all that, other than them saying that July of next year we'll have funds coming this way. And that's a large amount of money. It's going to take a large effort to manage that money. So we don't know what all that's going to be. We don't know what type of resources. There's folks coming out of the woodwork right now wanting to be consultants. But we want to make sure we hit the right steps, and we don't want to be behind. We want to be in front of it. We're also, one of the things that we're doing is we're working on making sure that we're federally compliant now with all of our rules, such as make sure we're updated on all of the minority classifications, as well as all the different things that the federal government requires. We're making sure that we'll be working through that for the next 2 or 3 months to make sure once this money gets here, there's not any obstacles for that. We don't anticipate that. There will be some attorney time that'll need to be done on that. In fact, Neighbors Giblin is currently working on one of those large tasks right now. So we've started that process, and I don't want to move too fast, but also I don't want to get stuck behind. So we're making sure we're getting our ball game right. We're making sure we're getting our side right. But the next thing will be consultants. We're going to need consultants, and I'm assigning Cherie Keeler. She'll be our Restore Act person. Everything will run through her, so that we've got one person that everything is funneling through, and she's talking to me on a daily basis about that. So, as that is going to be a huge deal for Wakulla County.
Are those things sort of like, are they going to be sort of like the word shovel-ready? Are we trying to...
There is a portion of the funds that are going to be awarded to shovel-ready, and that's what we've got to determine. And that's something that we've got to discuss and strategize on, is getting some projects ready to be shovel-ready as the potential. We want to talk to consultants about maybe some work on based upon us getting the funds, but we got to make sure we get a little bit closer down the line, and the picture becomes a little clearer, because this is a game changer for Wakulla County, no doubt about it. It will not be the same place if this funds come through here. We can do great things with this money.
Help restore our economy.
Yes, we can. Do that.
The couple of things about it that I think are important, and as we move forward in deciding what we end up deciding to do, we may need to look at trying to get someone else to do it in addition to Cherie on our staff, because if you want to have somebody who's still focused on grants and the Restore Act, I think the Restore Act has the potential to overwhelm. I think the Restore Act has the potential to monopolize one person's time.
No doubt about that, and that's a good possibility, but we want to see, we kind of want to get a little further down the line, but that is...
I'm just throwing it out.
I want to reserve that, because the last thing I'd want to do is try to save $50,000 in salary and lose $10 million. That just doesn't make a lot of sense.
You've got the 3 pots of money that we're really looking at, and this is my agenda item. We'll touch on it briefly tonight, but our workshop will go into it more if we move forward with the workshop, which I'm assuming we will. But there are 3 different pots of money we're looking at. One has almost directly $10 to $40 million that can come to Wakulla County as it's drawn currently, but the allocations aren't official yet, so under the proposed allocations. And there are 2 other pots of money that have potential for millions of dollars for infrastructure improvements. But we have to do things like be shovel-ready and set things up and have somebody who understands the rules to make sure we're meeting federal obligations.
Well, and there's also 3% of the funds that will be coming to us will be for administration, so we'll be able to pay a person to administer once we get there, but we may have to foot that money ahead of time and get paid back that, but yet we may have to, get someone in advance.
Does this money pretty much, is it coastal money? Is it coastal things?
Well, it's for our county. It's for the disproportionately affected counties.
Right. And it's primarily coastal, but it's not necessarily related to it. Like Apalachicola, they're going to do sewer plant expansions.
Right.
We're going to throw our sewer plant in there as well.
If we were to, the example I've used is potential that one of the things we might be able to do with the money is improve the sewer along the coast, but we could also maybe sewer Wakulla Gardens with it, depending on how much money, because that cleans the water quality for the whole area. And save that cost to Wakulla Gardens. But that's all hypothetical, maybe. There's a lot of stuff in the air.
But then we didn't borrow that money.
Well, it hasn't been officially allocated, and we don't know officially how much we're going to get. Under the current allocations proposed, that's what the workshop will go to. It's a long conversation, and I want to get everybody on the same page. But if it's a $5 billion fine, we get about $10 million. If it's a $20 billion fine, we get about $40 million, which is our entire county budget. I mean, $10 million exceeds what we collect in taxes, and we can do things with it fairly quickly. And there are two other pots of billions of dollars, millions, that we can apply to. And the way it's written is the 8 counties in the Panhandle are disproportionately affected and have preference in getting these things.
Also, to let you know, we had applied for our reapplied for our NERDA funding for our project list that we had submitted to you guys a couple of months ago. We've actually got a response back, and they're wanting to look at further explanation of what we want to do with Master Sands Park as a possibility, as well as there was one other, I'm sure he's not here, there was one other component. It was the our aquaculture portion of what we had turned in, so they're wanting to look at that as well. So that's a possibility we could even be getting some money from NERDA this year.
NERDA would be who?
It's a consortium. It's BP controlled money.
Okay.
They funnel down into the states for assigned projects, and right now they're not doing a whole lot. It's a long process.
It's a very long process.
That was a Hail Mary pass.
And again, for us, you need somebody under the money coming, the potential money for recovery from the Deep Horizon oil spill has the ability to really change our entire community. Because we're talking about the Restore Act money, which is fines being paid, NERDA, which is restoration that they're trying to do. You have lawsuit settlements that haven't begun to happen for lost wages and lost revenue for the county. And then there's economic development that the state's put through the University of West Florida for help bring jobs to the area, $30 million, that we have somebody that we might be able to partner with. And those are the top of the head monies that are out there. And my biggest concern becomes all of that has the potential, those 4 things could easily take up 1 or 2 people's time just trying to understand and get everything ready. And then I don't think we should be neglecting our grants and other opportunities that we've been traditionally going after.
We won't.
And that's
if it reaches a problem, I will let you guys know. But as of right now, we're balancing that. And but like I say, in the future, we may solve some of this through consulting services, etc. But we'll develop a plan for that. The other thing that we'll be presenting you guys, we'd like to talk to you about, is we would like to crank back up the fines and forfeiture fund and move the sheriff funding and spending into the fine and forfeiture fund for transparency, as well as for just collecting it all in one pot, just as we do with our building department as well as our fire. They're in their separate fund. Other counties are doing this, and we'll be bringing back. We want to work with the sheriff on all the details this coming up week, and be ready to bring something back at our next budget workshop for you guys to talk about something that we can all agree on. So, is there any problems with that you guys see? Okay. Other than that, I know the only other thing that seemed to be a relatively hot topic was our Tourist Development Council. I noticed we've got some tourist development folks here. Do y'all have any questions about our
I've got a couple questions.
TDC?
I'll probably ask you, or
we can ask Garrett.
we're right at $54,000 now for the TDC director. When do you guys think it's time to hire a full-time person?
Well, I mean, with the financial resources we have now to put towards all these projects, I mean, we're having to put more time into them, which means increasing those hours.
How many hours is that?
I think we're up to a 30-hour time frame now.
And here's the problem. Here's the problem that the citizens have that I know is paying $54,000 a year for 30 hours a week.
Well, there's no fringe benefits.
Not putting anybody down. I love the TDC director, but you go take the common man on the street and say somebody's working 30 hours a week and get $54,000 worth of benefits. That's a tough pill to swallow. And as you know, this has been simmering for a long, long time. And under the other stuff like big scenic byways, contracted services, it's $53,950. Just, I mean, what are stuff like that? Visit Florida, $14,500. Visit Florida Education, $36,000. What are those contracted services?
Well, some of those, and I'd have to look at it real carefully, but some of those are going to be inside the TDC and what Pam has written grants, but she also has her own private, she does her own things outside of the county.
And I'm not focusing on one person. I'm not anti-Pam. Let me go ahead and say that.
Well, that's the biggest thing we need to do is remove the personalities and talk about the position.
I'm just talking about
the story.
The director, whoever the director is getting the contracted services line item, the health insurance, and a portion of the contracted services out of here also.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think y'all need to look at some point. I mean, why not hire Pam full-time employee?
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm saying Pam, but you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of money for a 30-hour contracted position.
Sure, and we can go back to our council and we can discuss this.
I would encourage y'all to do that.
All right.
Just a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people.
I share the same thing Randy does. We both talk to other people, and they're telling me the same thing they're telling him. And I have a little trouble with somebody wearing two hats. You're working for us and you're working for yourself. In my business, I've always had trouble with people working for me and working for themselves. I just would never have that happen because I never had it happen successfully.
The grants that are going after, whether privately or publicly, whether they require a 501c3 for the matching part of it, everyone has an opportunity to apply for that. There's nobody saying that one person's going to actually get every grant they apply for. So, I mean, it's competitive out there. It's not like it's just handed down. There's work to be done for it. There's documentation for it. And as far as the council goes for the tasks that we have for our director, we had an increase in monies, which we have to look at advertising, how we're going to put this money back into bringing folks here. And just let me just tell you, the director is the face of Wakulla County everywhere she goes, or he goes, who's ever in that position. When we go to workshops across the state, when people look at Wakulla County, we have a face there. And we just need to make sure that's consistent and we keep that there. And if we keep adding all these tasks on, maybe a full-time position is something we need to look at. But then we've really looked at staffing costs. I know we've looked at adding more staff all the time, and that's been something that's been reluctant, So
my only point was that at some point, for that amount of money for 30 hours, I really think y'all should look at having a full-time county. They'd be a county employee, correct? They'd be supervised by David or whoever, and they could also go after these grants or whatever and could administer them. And I just think you get.
But would the council lose their ability to direct their director? I mean, we all volunteer our time. We all are part of service industries, if you will. Niraj Patel, who has the Best Western. I'm here for the National Wildlife Refuge. A lot of visitors come to Wakulla Springs. We have representatives on there. And if you put this position back under the county, we lose our ability to have direct input on how these monies are collected from visitors that come in. These taxes aren't paid.
It wouldn't. I'm assuming we would leave the TDC as it is structured today.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't pull her underneath me. She would still report to the TDC and then to the council, but she would be a county employee.
Okay.
Right.
I guess it'd be analogous to Heather being a county employee. She doesn't report to David. She reports to the board.
But she works with me very closely. So, yeah.
And are you saying Are you saying that you want to see the funding increase to make it a full-time position, or are you saying you want to make it a full-time position at the current cost?
$54,000 a year, I would, in my mind, should be enough to fund a full-time position. I don't know how much somebody, I don't put anybody on the spot, but I'm sure a lot of our county employees, and I know there's different duties, I understand that 100%. I just like y'all to look at that.
Okay.
I know you guys recommend how you want to spend it, but we're the ones really to decide it. And,
Sure.
I highly encourage you to.
Just remember, when you start looking at paying fringe benefits for another
I know,
employee,
I know.
you're looking at an extra 25 to 30% on top of the base salary.
I understand.
You're looking at $80,000 a year.
I don't know if it'd be that much, but I understand what you're saying.
Well,
Anybody else from the TDC want to say anything?
I'd just like to add,
And I don't have the exact figures, but the amount of money our current director brings in grants far exceeds what we pay her. She's been phenomenal at that, and we have a real talented director.
I agree. 100%.
Tim, one of you, in this world we live in, communications is essential. We need to know how much she's bringing in. We need to see it physically. We can get you that. We need, you need to tell us that. You need to show us. Show me.
It's in
how much. It's in our budget.
It is in the budget.
It's in the budget. Yeah. Okay.
isolated.
One of the things that people tell me is they can't see what we're doing. You know, whether that be true or not, maybe there's whatever, but they tell me a plan that we present to y'all, and well, you got to present it to the people who vote for us. They want to see it.
And Commissioner Moore, I just want to
We can
echo.
certainly do that. And they're welcome, all our meetings are open.
Yeah.
We welcome participation and we have some from people inside the industry and people that are just interested.
But get in the newspaper, write editorials, tell the people what you're doing, and show them what you're doing so they can put their eyes on it.
We're all volunteers, Jerry. She works 20 hours. You know, you don't have time to that's why we'd like to increase our hours.
And I personally, Tim, this is just me speaking personally, I'd like to see some more of this TDC money going towards capital projects.
I'd like to, but it has to increase. You know, we've had a big slowdown with this BP thing and the economy, and I'm sure it's going to increase as the economy improves and
Well, let me give you an
the
example.
perception from BP
I'm
goes by.
trying to get DOT to allow us to put some landscaping or whatever on the 319 now, just to kind of spruce up. That certainly TDC money could pay for that. And I don't know if y'all...
Could, but that'd come out of marketing. Marketing is our primary goal. I mean, we've brought you our goals, and that is our primary goal, is marketing and trying to get heads in beds. We also support all the festivals, and we give them grants, you know, so, and they have to show us how they use that money. They have to use it for marketing.
And you're not, and you're not going to see a lot of "come visit Wakulla" advertising if you're in Wakulla. Hopefully,
right. We try to get outside the area and target those areas that are.
Let me give you an example of how my thinking works. If you go to Chuck Shields' place, he has a nice facility, he has nice restrooms. People go to St. Mark's to go to Shields Marina because it's nice. Certainly that's tourist development. They may only be coming to Tallahassee, Georgia. My point would be, why not apply the same logic, say Masha Sands, and improve it to make it a really nice first-class boat ramp. That's going to increase
But
tourism.
if they don't see it, you know, they've got to get here to see it. That's the only thing, Randy. Like on Chuck, for instance, we've done these writers' forums, and we've gotten thousands and thousands of dollars worth of advertising just from writers coming in, outdoor writers, and they went to Chuck's, and we put them with guides, and they went out and fished, and
I know there's been
the exposure we've gotten from that has been tremendous. You know, just
Again, let me be clear. I'm not a TDC hater. I'm just
I know, I
relaying
understand, yeah.
things that I hear all the time.
But I just don't know I don't think capital expenditures are going to affect people that don't know about us. And our main goal is to get people to come that don't know about us. And that's always been our biggest challenge in reaching outside of the community and getting people to come.
Well, the board, I think, has typically always just taken y'all's budget. But
Well, y'all been very supportive, and we appreciate it. And I've been on this
This is
thing
what you
since the
want.
very beginning, and when I first heard about it, I thought, this is crazy. It's something I didn't even want to see happen, and since I've been on it, I just think it's been a big help. But I do know it's, because Bonnie was a director at one point in time,
and it's terribly hard to do any job in 20 hours. You know, it's,
Just
and
so-
they don't. They actually all work 30, but they get paid for 20, so.
Just so that you know, what people tell me is that we did an increase in the revenue, and that we now pass that increase over to salary, that it doesn't go anywhere other than...
That's not correct, though. If you look
Well,
at...
then you need to
Yeah.
go out into the...
I mean, it's on our budget, Jerry, and we'll...
The public needs to see that, though. The
Yeah,
people
I know.
out there need to see
Yeah.
that.
Well, I would
correct.
argue it's our responsibility as the board, that when someone says you pass this all on to the staff, to say, no, clearly we have, when the budget's gone significantly up in advertising and marketing, there is an increase in budget salary to take her from 20, to take our current director from 20 hours to 30 hours.
I think if we didn't ask the questions, we wouldn't be doing our job either.
No, I agree.
Yeah, well, I agree, too. But we should direct them to the budget and to our expenditures and...
Well, I'm sort of like Randy. I'd like to see a full-time job. I'd like to see the person working for us full-time.
Oh, I would, too, I think, but we're not at that point yet. You know, we're getting there.
With all due respect,
Yeah.
Tim, you're at 53,000. That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, but actually, like I said, she brings in a lot more grant money than we get in tax revenue, you know? And it's hard to find somebody that can do that.
Well, we put her on a salary plus commission,
I don't
but
think
she
you
still
can-
works for us.
I don't think you can do that with most grants, but...
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but it would...
I like
Probably would
you
work.
pay your agents on commission.
Yeah,
I paid mine on commission. They work harder on commission.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we'd come out ahead that way. I'm not sure. We'd have to look at it, you know.
I have a question about effectiveness, and I know you kind of look at your bed tax revenues as your measure of effectiveness, but I thought there was going to be a grant that was helping you to identify some other ways to assess the relative effectiveness of one strategy versus another, and so you could put your money into the more effective approaches. And has that, I never really heard, it's in process? Okay.
Do you want to...
Trying to ascertain where the customers come from and that sort of thing. I know we've got some interns working on that.
I got a question on the revenue side, David. Their fiscal year 12 budget was at that 2% rate? Is that correct?
What's that now?
When did it go from 2 to 4? From
It's at 4 right now.
It's at 4 right now.
So it went from 48 in fiscal year 11, it went from 48,890. By doubling the tax rate from 2 to 4, it went to 71,792. Is that correct? Was that a whole year of revenue?
This was the...
You see what I'm saying?
That was what, that's what was budgeted, that's correct, but, yes. Greg,
I'm
what
saying?
was the 2012 actuals today?
I think we went to 3...
It went from 2% in fiscal year 2011 to 3% and then 4%.
That's right.
Those changes are occurring in this year. They've
Okay.
both taken place already, but we have not seen the cumulative effect of an entire year yet.
I guess what I'm asking is when, I'm going on to a different subject, but if you take into account the percentage increases, are the bed revenues going up? The hotel bed revenues, in other words, are more people coming to stay here?
I can answer that from because I do vacation rentals, and we've had a very good increase this summer, but that won't be reflected yet until the end of, actually Labor Day is the end of the season, and the main season for us. Some of my rentals are in Alligator Point, and they still come to front Wakulla County.
But that is y'all's benchmark, right?
Well, it's legal. Our office is here. But
that's y'all's benchmark, Tim, right? Is basically how much revenue?
Yeah, and so it's hard to ascertain that yet because it's
If you look at your budget,
this quarter isn't over yet, you know.
if you
So
look at your budget book there, 2010 was 50, 2011 was 49. So it was flat, it was close. And so over the historical period of several years, yes, they've gone up. But I think what they've done is essentially just doubled their 2 to 4.
I think the TDC was also using up a reserve that they had.
Well, it's local tourist development tax. That would be all it is.
Yeah,
It's just
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all. David, do you have any other,
That does me.
before we have another probably 20 minutes with the workshop if you all want to use them, do y'all have any suggestions of ideas of where you'd like to see changes in the budget, increases, decreases?
Balanced and, well, many things. Not putting money in reserve, we're not taking money out of other departments.
Something to think about as we move forward. I was talking with RH at the senior center. I know they lost a little bit of grant funding, and we've slowly cut their funding over time. I don't know if you'll ever want to go back, maybe not this year, maybe next year or this year. We used to fund them around 75,000. I think we've taken it down to like 67. Do you ever want to take it back up to 75 at some point? I know they lost some significant grant funding this year, so I wanted to mention that.
You have an 8% unemployment rate, and that 8% is not a true rate. The true rate of unemployment is like 15%. So we just cannot spend money when we got 15% unemployment.
Right, and I'm not, there are ways to, okay, I was just pointing it out as something to think about as we're looking at the budget. If you see a place where you think there might be places to cut, you think like there's other places, I don't know, there's other places you think we might need to spend more money in the future. I know you talked about the rec park for a while. I'm just pointing it out now. I'd much rather have these conversations early than waiting until the last public hearing and say, now I want to see this major change. That's something that's happened in the past and has frustrated me. I'd rather talk about it now. So I'm pointing out early, think about the senior center if you're talking about things. I know I'm watching ESG took some big cuts last year. I've been watching them work. I'm not sure if they seem to be stretched, so I'm not sure how they're doing, but they seem to come back with the same proposal. And I don't know if there's other places that we're worried about.
I'll let you know. I'm talking to John. We'll be meeting with John and Cleve tomorrow. So
yeah, I don't know if there's places where y'all think we have extra funding that you want to see cut. That's my main concern.
We got a balanced budget.
Okay.
And we didn't raise taxes.
Okay.
One thing I would like to look, I brought this up several times before, but it's on the fire MSBU. We got, to me, it's not a huge issue, but we have, if you're on a 200-acre parcel and you got a house on it, you're paying $75. And if you pay the raw land, you know what I'm saying? At some point, we need to say your MSBU for a unit is a house and 5 acres. Anything over that, you still pay the raw land. And I'll give you my property, for example. I got 18 acres. I go out and burn it all the time. I got fire lines cut, and I'm a lot more likely to catch my house on fire because I set my woods on fire.
I think it's a really good point.
So, just something to look at. I've read the statute. I think we can legally do it easy enough. It's not going to be a big boom, but, and I told you what brought this up is a guy came in and built a house on several hundred acres, and it turns out the county's going to owe him a refund because his MSB went down so much. Anyway, just something to think about on the revenue side.
I have a question for Donnie, and also I want to make sure for Buddy. And I've missed some of these budget workshops. So how solid is your estimate on the property tax revenues at this point?
Right now, we're projected to be at 3%. I think when it actually is finalized, we'll come in a little below that, which will be better for the commissioners. But I'd much rather be on the wrong side than I am the other side. So I think it'll come in less than what we projected, but you're talking percentage, 1.5%, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
Do we have that number figured into our numbers?
Yes.
We used the last numbers he gave us, which was 3%.
Yeah, we certified what we projected it to be, but we don't know. We're still putting the roll together. It has been approved, but you won't be finalized until sometime probably, well, after the VAB gets through. So, but I don't see anything out there that's going to have it go negatively in the wrong direction. And I think that we'll probably come in a little bit better than worse. So that's the closest I can get you right now.
Okay, thank you. And Betty, I know you had some voting equipment needs, and these are all addressed. You're in good shape as we're with that.
Yes, ma'am. We've got until 2016 to make the change. My request has been to get it by 14 so that we can get through a midterm election and use this new equipment before the big election in 16.
So none of this is, there's nothing in this year's
There's
budget for
nothing in the
that?
budget for any equipment, no ma'am.
Okay, so you're planning on that for next year, is that the
It's in our
idea?
5-year plan.
Yes, it's in the 5-year.
And it was cheaper, actually, it was better for us on the bottom line to go ahead and pay that in one shot and versus spreading it out. So
And we're gonna
math
be-
worked better.
And the quote was given, actually would be lower because they didn't account for the equipment, all the equipment we had, that they take in for trade-in, so that would be a little plus.
Okay.
Do any of the other department heads or their representatives want anything to say, or do y'all have anything you want to say in addition to us? Tax collector, sheriff's department? Additional staff? Any citizens have any comments? Did anyone turn in a card? Okay. Any additional comments from the county commission? All right, everybody.
Crackers for our next meeting.
Go at 20 minutes, and then we'll start our next meeting. Thank y'all.